The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 102.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Voyager episode, Emanations. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and make sure to leave us some comments in both places. We love to interact with you and share your comments on the show as part of our feedback. We'd love to have that. So this is Emanations. It's a first season Voyager episode. It's the 9th produced, but 8th aired, I think is how they have it. And it aired in March of 95, which is interesting because it was a different time then. That's about 25 years ago as we record this. This episode was written by Brannon Braga, who long time worked on both Next Gen and Voyager, and I think some DS9. Am I off on that?
I think he might have written some episodes. I don't think he was like a showrunner or anything like that.
Yeah. But apparently this was a pet project of Brannon Braga. Ever since he started working on the Next Gen, he wanted to do an episode about death. That's what he said, in how, from a science fiction perspective. And he said about this episode that at the time, at least, he was personally opposed to euthanasia. And this was a quote. He said, "Our reality as an alien afterlife was an idea that ended up affording philosophical explorations, namely, what is life? Could something really lie beyond life? And a great deal of social commentary about euthanasia." And so he really did try to put euthanasia as a concept into this episode, as we'll see as we talk to it.
And he had a good point that once euthanasia is accepted by a society, there's going to be pressure put on people to euthanize themselves, even if they don't really want to, which is something that comes out in this episode. However, euthanasia doesn't really come into the picture until fairly late in this episode, and it's frankly the less interesting of the topics that we deal with. I really didn't remember this episode of Voyager. I may have only seen it once before, and it was a surprise to me because it may be the best of the first season. Yeah. The frankly more interesting subject is the what lies beyond death subject, which is the euthanasia stuff is kind of late to the party, but that one is front and center from the beginning.
The more fundamental question is what does it mean to have an afterlife? What does it mean to go on? And I'd like to deal with it as we go through it, as it comes up, because it's a question I think that catches the Voyager crew by surprise, and they are not equipped to answer that question in a way that could be satisfying to the people they encounter, the Vori, I think is they're called.
Well, it is kind of funny because it brings up that issue of, that science doesn't have all the answers. And, because that's always kind of a underlying assumption, especially with more recent Star Trek, that, science answers everything.
Right.
Because, of course, you hear that in our culture, too, is science, you don't need to believe in God because science has all the answers. And if science doesn't know the answers, they will by the time we're flying, warp 9 starships across the galaxy.
Right. There's a bit of that expectation that all the answers are found through the observation of the natural world.
So why don't we, just to get into the episode, why don't we talk about the title, or I should say before we get into the episode, Emanations. Apparently, so the Voyager encounters a race of aliens with funny noses and funny foreheads, that has a belief that apparently creation is structured into a series of emanations. They don't say emanations from what, but if they're alluding to an earthly parallel with that, presumably it's emanations from some fundamental reality which corresponds to God. It's a lot like Neoplatonism has a similar idea, and Gnosticism picked it up of God has various emanations that get progressively further from him, and our world is embedded in that pattern as a product of that pattern, and the soul then returns to God by passing up through higher emanations. And so these aliens believe that they're living in one emanation, and then they pass on with their physical bodies into another emanation where they achieve universal consciousness. And this is something that really they didn't communicate clearly in the episode, but it appears, and this is based partly on background information, it appears that our reality, where Voyager is in a different dimension or a different emanation than they are. So they're not in our universe. They have to cross subspace to get to their universe. That's not initially obvious. When Harry Kim first shows up in their reality, it's like, oh yeah, we're from a distant part of the galaxy. And even though after that they use this language of you're from a different dimension or a different emanation, they never prove that to us. And I think that's a flaw in the episode. They should have done something, even on the dialogue level, to tell us, no, that really is true, if that's what they want us to understand, because that's actually a fascinating idea. What if our universe is somebody else's heaven, somebody else's afterlife? Right. And that's what they're going for. So the reason the title is plural, emanations, is because we have two different emanations in this episode. We have our reality, which is their afterlife, and then we have their reality, which is their life.
Right. Very good. Yeah, that's actually a good summary of that, because I did notice that too, that they hint at this idea, but they don't close the loop on it.
Yeah. Our MacGuffin that gets us into this plot is element 247. According
I wanted
to
talk about that. Yeah.
According to the voiceover at the beginning of the episode, there are 246 elements known to Federation science, but they may have just detected the 247th in a cloud of asteroids that's maybe a ring of a gas giant that also, for some bizarre reason, have M-class atmospheres inside them.
Yes.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense scientifically.
Nope.
The 247, by the way, if you ever look up on like Memory Alpha, the Federation periodic table, it has all kinds of crazy elements in it, like Daffy Duckium and stuff like that. Apparently, scientists giving things funny names like quark and gluons and things like that continues into the future. But they think they found 247, which they says has more than 550 nucleons, and it's stable. And I'm like, wow, I would expect it to have considerably more than 550 nucleons if it's stable. One of the things that, nucleons are the particles in the nucleus of an atom, so that's protons and neutrons. Protons are positively charged, and so that means they repel each other like the positive poles of a magnet. And they need to, in order for them to be bound together, they need buffers that are neutral. And that's what neutrons do. And so the more protons you get, the more neutrons you need to buffer them. Otherwise, the element becomes unstable and starts spitting out protons and neutrons. And that's where nuclear radioactivity comes from. You also have the strong nuclear force trying to hold all this together, but the strong nuclear force can only do so much. And so having an element with 247 protons, it's the number of protons that tells you the element number. Having an element with 247 is going to be so huge. I don't think the strong force is going to hold it together, and I think it's not going to be very stable, and it's going to need way more than 550 nucleons in order to achieve stability, if that's even possible.
Because right now, in reality, we have 118 elements on the table, as far as I know, according to Wikipedia, anyway.
Yeah. Organesson is the most recently named one.
And 26 of those have only been synthesized in labs or nuclear reactors, and that's the ones at the higher end.
Everything above 92, everything above uranium, we have to make.
Because they're, like you said, they're unstable. So that means, it's like you said, it's highly unlikely that you would find anything, I mean, as far as we know, that anything like that at the higher end would be a naturally occurring stable element, unless it's these, like you said, the massive numbers of nucleons. So, but, hey, science fiction, we have warp drive, so
yeah, exactly.
Let's go with it. And as you said, they have this Class D planet, which is a gas giant, with a ring of asteroids. So it's a ring planet, but the ring is made of asteroids, not ice, like usual. And the asteroids have Class M atmospheres for some reason.
Yeah, maybe there was a Class M moon that broke up or something.
And kept its atmospheres.
Yeah, they arrived really recently after the breakup or something.
I suppose, now this is a bit of retcon, I suppose you could say maybe the atmospheres come along with the bodies that emanate.
Or maybe they emanate from the bodies.
Yeah, right.
Like the
so
spider
they're breathing
webs.
dead people.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, so they beam down to the asteroid. So it's Chakotay and Torres and Kim. They beam down to one of the asteroids and they walk through some of these cobwebs, which they call an organic biopolymer residue.
Oh, no. It's better than that. So they're walking through what anyone who's ever been on Earth would call spider webs.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's either, I think it's Kim says, "What's this?" And B'Elanna says, "It's organic, some kind of biopolymer residue." So it's like, B'Elanna, you're half human. You grew up on Earth. It's spider webs.
So
and
Kim grew up on
and
Earth,
then some kind of biopolymer residue.
Yes.
And by the way, we got to get this out of the way. There are 7 some kinds of in this episode.
Yes, it's amazing.
I'm gonna start. I was thinking of keeping a tab, like keeping a rolling
I actually
tally.
went through the transcript online and just searched for some kind of and came up with 7 hits.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Amazing. I caught some. In a minute, we're going to hit some kind of subspace vacuole.
Yes.
Like,
just as an aside, I rewatched Avengers: Age of Ultron last night, and apparently there was some kind of shield around a building, which was a shield. So
Voyager must have been around somewhere.
Exactly.
Some kind of Voyager must have been around somewhere.
Yeah, it's not just a Star Trek Voyager thing, but yeah, it is funny that this writer's penchant for some kind of. So
they go stumbling around and they find a lot of people who are trussed up in cocoons, and they don't immediately say, "Where's the giant spider?" like in Lord of the Rings.
Attercop. Yeah, that's what I'd be wondering. Where do these? What has wrapped these bodies? So some of the bodies are fully decomposed, and they decide that they realize that the element that they're looking for, this element 247, is a byproduct of the decomposition. We should say that the reason that they're hunting for this element is if there is a stable version of element 247, they could use it for some sort of
stuff.
Felgercarb technobabble that would get them home faster. So
deep cut Babylon 5 reference with the Felgercarb there.
That's a Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica. Yeah,
Battlestar Galactica. Yep.
So the
old school.
Yes, very old school. That's me. So they Chakotay, to his credit, we have a nice character building moment for Chakotay here, which is we learn that Chakotay is not just a former Starfleet officer and Maquis, and that he has Native American heritage, but he's also a bit of an archaeologist here. Mm-hmm. He's got some part of his background is archaeology. He wants to leave the bodies as is, untouched, to respect the people who've put these bodies here. While Kim sees it as a unique anthropological opportunity. So, and it raises the classic anthropology/archaeology question. When is it tomb robbing and when is it research or science?
It's research when you don't have another way to get equivalently good data.
Okay.
Like I don't think we should cavalierly dig up George Washington. I mean, if you have a good reason, like was he poisoned or something? Well, okay, the only way you're likely to get that data is by digging him up, so it justifies it. Otherwise, though, you can learn a lot about George Washington just by reading records. And so you don't need to dig him up for ordinary purposes.
Yeah.
So the older the culture, the less known about the culture, the harder it's going to be to get reasonable data and the easier it is to justify research, at least from my perspective. From other people's perspectives, I have like a friend from Malaysia, and she, in her culture, you leave graves alone, period, no matter how old they are. And to me, it's like, no, you can dig up Pharaoh's grave. It's totally fine. This is our way of honoring those people, is to learn about them. But you do have this difference of perspectives across cultures. And some people, it's like, no, they're buried. You leave them alone no matter what. That trumps the desire to learn about them. Chakotay has, even though, so you have kind of a different set of viewpoints. You have Kim on the let's take scans side. You have Chakotay on the let's leave him alone side. You kind of have Janeway in the middle. But even though I don't fully agree with Chakotay, he has a nice moment here where he points out just how much you can learn just by looking. Because the people who put the bodies here clearly believe in some kind of afterlife, or appear to believe in some kind of afterlife, because the bodies are in what to humanize look like postures of serenity, which could, of course, be postures of terror or some kind of natural reflex that doesn't mean anything, but it looks like postures of serenity. And they don't have any grave goods on them, suggesting that the people don't believe you can take grave goods into the afterlife. And the fact that they're here at all suggests deliberate deposition, or at least concern for public hygiene. And so he has this kind of Sherlock Holmes, you're seeing but not observing moment, where he deduces a bunch of stuff, but he convinces Janeway to let him only look at these bodies.
Not even passive scans.
Not even passive scans, which, of course, your eyes are a passive scan. And he says you can only learn with your eyes. And I'm like, what? Not even photos? That's just the same thing as your eye, but with a record.
Right. Yeah, although I wonder if they have even a way of taking a photo that isn't a scan by that point with a tricorder. But, you know, that's an interesting question. I find it interesting that Starfleet doesn't have a protocol. I mean, obviously that we're writing a TV episode, but I would think that Starfleet would have a protocol for what you do when you encounter the tombs of a brand new alien race. What is the first contact protocol for this when you encounter their tombs before you encounter the people?
Yeah, well, if it's anything like modern protocols, it's going to be take several years and get permission from the local authorities.
Right.
It's not like the gung-ho 19th century. You could just use dynamite and blow your way in and start finding stuff out.
Yeah.
That's the curse of the mummy on you. So they are interrupted in this interesting moment by a dimensional distortion, as we said, some kind of subspace vacuole. And they're beamed out, an emergency beam out, but in the process, they get Chakotay and Torres in one of the bodies, but Kim got pulled into the vacuole. And then it turns out that the body is still technically not, as you might say in The Princess Bride, not dead yet.
Yeah, not fully dead. So what happened is as we learn, is the vacuole is a naturally occurring phenomenon. It occurs every 6 hours at this location. It also occurs at many other locations. And there's this alien race in another emanation who are dumping their bodies when they're about to die in through the vacuole to transport them to the next emanation. And so what happened is they were dumping a body through here, and that's what got caught in the transporter beam in place of Harry Kim. So you have this Freaky Friday body swap where only it's physical instead of mental.
That would have been weird if it was Harry in her body. That would have been a very different episode. So, so Harry materializes inside this dimensional coffin, which they call a cenotaph.
Which is an interesting word choice for the writers. A cenotaph is a false burial site. It's like where if it gets used in a few situations. If you don't know where someone's body is, you can put up a cenotaph for them. It's to honor them. Although the pharaohs in ancient Egypt actually had a real burial site, and then they also had a cenotaph somewhere else. And if memory serves, it may be because they were the pharaoh of northern and southern Egypt, so they typically have their real burial in one of the Egypts and their cenotaph in the other Egypt.
And that, in this case, their burial, these people, their real burial is in another dimension or wherever.
Yeah.
We see Harry Kim, so knocking on the inside of the coffin. Like, can you imagine that at a funeral?
In a funeral, yeah. Suddenly from inside the coffin, knock, knock, knock. That's effectively creepy.
Yes. And then we cut to the next scene where he's in this preparation room where they're trying to figure out what happened and why he's there. And there's this other guy in there, because apparently they don't have private preparation rooms, who is saying goodbye to his wife before his death. And then he sees Harry come in and is told that he came back from the next emanation, which is, as we said, clearly like their heaven. That could really, if you're someone who's about to die, that could be an interesting moment. You maybe want to find out. They call for a thanatologist.
Yeah, nice word. Person who studies death. Thanatos.
Yes. This death and dying, including the body's changes, which I thought was interesting.
And by the way, did you notice who the actor is that plays the chief thanatologist? It's Jerry Hardin. He pops up periodically in science fiction, most famously in the X-Files, where he played the original Deep Throat in series 1.
That's right. Yeah, Jerry Hardin. Yeah, he's one of those guys who's been in everything. I think he's been in Star Trek multiple times over the years. But yeah, that's right. He just died a few years ago, in fact.
2012, I think it did,
yeah. So anyway, they're taken aback when he tells them that he saw dead bodies on the asteroid he came from, which is clearly at odds with their belief. So again, their belief is not just that they're sending dead bodies over, but that the people are living on the other side. Which again, it kind of comes to me. They must have like accidents or wars or things where people die unexpectedly. I mean, that frankly, probably more people die unexpectedly here than not.
Well, I mean, we find out later that the cenotaph, as we talked about, with the euthanasia, actually kills them, sends them over. So I suppose they think they get rebuilt, regenerated or resurrected on the other side.
Yeah, but they've seen people die on their own side. They must have accidents, and people can't get to the thanatorium in time and stuff.
I wonder if those people get sent over too or not.
Presumably so, since the cenotaph kills a person before it sends them over for reasons.
Yeah.
The mere fact you've died before you go over is not a problem.
I do think it's fascinating how this religion must have developed on a world where these subspace vacuoles would have presumably been a naturally occurring phenomenon throughout the history and the development of this species, and therefore they've incorporated these natural elements into their belief system as a gateway to the next life, and which sort of makes some sense.
Yeah, and they call them spectral ruptures, and so that's that makes sense. They're spectral because they think they take you to the afterlife. Where your specter or soul goes.
Right.
And also there are clearly a rupture because you can go through it.
Yep.
And so meanwhile, back on Voyager, the doctor was able to revive this poor woman from the cavern and cured the cancer that was killing her.
Brain cancer.
Yes. And he says that the webbing that was around this cocoon was actually
awesome.
A natural byproduct of decomposition for their species, which frankly seems very quick. If she was just killed before, that happens very quick.
But look later. I mean, it's instantaneous.
When she does die, it is instantaneous. But this is the awesome part: is all those cobwebs they were walking through were just more advanced decomposition. So yes, the doctor says you were strolling through dead bodies.
I love Chakotay's expression at that point. When he finally realizes that. So the woman wakes up and is understandably hysterical and confused, which, no duh. And so she explains to, once she calms down, on the other side, Harry has Nerea, the thanatologist, explain to him how the cenotaph euthanizes people just before the vacuole takes them away. The vacuole occurs periodically. At this particular one, every 6 hours, but there are thousands on the planet, and they're natural.
And that's actually why they built the thanatorium here, is because this is where this spectral rupture happens.
Right. But when Rhea, I forget how he pronounces, but he starts quizzing him about what's on the other side, Harry blathers a bit until he realizes, oh wait, Prime Directive. But Nerea isn't going to let Harry go while he can still study him.
Ensign Harry hasn't quite had his Prime Directive and First Contact protocols refreshed recently enough.
Yeah, it suddenly dawns on Harry that this is what we call a first contact situation, and then he starts. It's awesome the way he clumsily says about how in first contact situations we've learned to be very careful about how much we tell alien cultures we've just met. It's like. Maybe you want to rephrase that for the alien culture you've just met. It sounds like you're keeping secrets.
Exactly. If you think about it if it was from our perspective, what that would seem like, yes. Now, Chakotay says that they've surveyed the ring around this planet. There are 200,000 bodies in the ring.
That are still detectable. Presumably many more have become spider webs.
Yep. Right. And he says a vacuole appears every 2 hours. So that's 3 vacuoles accounted for if they all occur on 6-hour intervals. So assuming they all go to the same place and have the same period. So perhaps there's even the vacuoles don't all go to the same place. Perhaps if there's thousands of vacuoles.
Or I took it to mean the place they were detecting the vacuole was every 2 hours, but there are lots of other vacuoles they haven't scanned. I assume they just have different frequencies.
Yeah. I mean, because they said the one that Harry went through was every 6 hours, they said, and then they say they detect them every 2. So maybe they have different frequencies, but that's... So I'm curious whether that's another sort of loose end that was left on the script is do all of these people go and end up in the same place or not? That's one of my questions. They
seem to imply that they do. They all end up in this asteroid ring system later on. By the way, meanwhile, the lady who had died has woken up again, and she's now less hysterical and is able to explain that her name is Terra, or Patera. Last name, presumably, is Dactyl.
Yes, Pterodactyl is her name. And her brother Patach. That's a Klingon reference. So she asks Jamie to explain this divergence from her religious beliefs. We're supposed to evolve into a higher level of consciousness when we die. We're supposed to gain a greater understanding of the universe. All our questions are supposed to be answered. Janeway obviously can't explain any of this, but promises to get answers for her, which is a bad idea.
I like how Janeway, and I don't remember specifically which conversation it was, but one of the things that both Janeway and Cass and Harry do in talking to these people is saying, look, just because you've learned more about how this works doesn't mean your beliefs are false.
Right.
And this comes out in a conversation with Cass and Patera, because she's explaining about souls and the people from the other emanation. I didn't really get their name.
Vorans, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the aliens are presumably Jehovah's Witnesses because they don't believe in souls. They believe you have to have the afterlife as a physical body. There's no separated soul. And so that's why the dead bodies are such a problem for them. And they're not easily accepting the reconciliations or harmonizations that the Voyager crew are proposing. And this is one of the things that makes this episode so effective. I mean, just think of how amazingly disturbing it would be to wake up in an unexpected afterlife.
Right.
I mean, on the one hand, glad there's an afterlife. On the other hand, I'm really freaked out.
Exactly. Right. Especially if you're the only one from your world who's there. That would be really freaky. Therefore, the Venori is the name. I just looked it up.
The Vinvaci. Okay.
Yeah. So, the Fibonacci's. So the ship is shaken, and Tom Paris reports that there is some kind of ding. I need a bell, I think is what it is. Dimensional distortion in main engineering.
There are podcasts that use sound effects for like footnote, and they have a footnote sound effect. We could have a ding for some kind of.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a bell, I think is what I'm gonna need. And so it turns out the vacuoles are attracted to the warp drive, and they destabilize the warp drive because it's all related to subspace, which makes sense. So the man on the other side, Hatil, who had been preparing to die, he was sharing a room with Harry. he's now getting cold feet, understandably, and he's having a crisis of faith.
In part because he's got this metal brace that helps him walk that we suddenly see when he tries to get up.
Right. And his wife tells him, don't throw away a lifetime of belief just because an alien shows up from the afterlife. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, I sympathize. I mean, as a Christian, I would probably be saying the same thing. Just because something unexpected happens that may or may not have something to do that some people think has to do with our belief system, the fundamental aspects of our faith, doesn't mean you just throw your faith away on a whim.
Right. And, a single piece of contrary data does not overcome the data you've got. Also, these people should be more open to alternative reconciliations than they are.
Right.
This is something that there's kind of how do I say this? Some folks of any particular religion or no religion have a very limited worldview where they think they know exactly how things work. And if anything comes along to suggest that maybe there's more to it than that, it becomes a crisis of belief for them. Mm-hmm. And so you see this in history, for example. It's like a lot of people thought the Earth was, the center of the universe. It turns out it's not. Well, for some people, that was a crisis of faith, but it's like not a big deal, actually. In the same way, you have people like who say are total materialists, scientific materialists, and you give them evidence maybe like psychic powers exist. It's, that can't be. That's impossible. In fact, I recently was looking at a paper published by in a journal where it was a rebuttal of a paper arguing that we do have some evidence for psychic phenomena, and the skeptics who wrote it refused to look at the data in the paper they were critiquing because it was impossible for that data to be right. And so for them, it would be a crisis of belief if it turned out, hey, we've got some evidence for this. So any viewpoint, if you take an overly simplistic, I think I really know how the world works in all the details view, anything that comes along that suggests, hey, there's more than you were expecting is going to be unsettling. And that's why everyone needs to listen to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. So you have an appreciation of all the mystery that's out there.
Exactly. So, and in fact, Harry says something along these lines. He's trying to, he says, for all we know, those dead bodies were just the corporeal remains of the people as they ascended a higher consciousness. And then he confesses that he doesn't know what happens to his own people, human beings, after we die. He says that this is his quote, there have certainly been medical experts and philosophers and theologians who spent a great deal of time debating what happens after death, but no one's come up with an answer yet.
It's a bit of an overstatement.
Yeah, I think we've got answers. We're open to information, but we've got some answers. Yeah. So Hatil then reveals that he's being pressured into killing himself because after his accident, which is why he has the brace, he's been a burden on his family, and his family got together, voted, and agreed that he should move on to the next emanation. And he admits to being secretly terrified of dying. And again, we don't like to get into politics here, but this has actually come up in my state where I live, Massachusetts, where there have been assisted suicide laws proposed, and other places where those laws have been passed, where people report, that sort of pressure being put on them. And I remember a case from years ago of the Hemlock Society, which loves this idea of assisted suicide. The founders, one of the two founders, found out they were a married couple, found out she had cancer, and one day came home and found a note on a pillow along with a bottle of pills and said, "You know what to do," from the husband. An option can sometimes become mandatory, and that's kind of what we're seeing here.
Well, and that's from what Hatil's
Go ahead, Father.
I was going to say, and that's definitely a concern in our country today because more and more states like Montana, like Oregon, have passed physician-assisted suicide laws, or courts, in the case of Montana, I think it was a court ruling that legalized it. And I think that's a legitimate concern in our day-to-day, especially, when we do talk about, well, we could treat that, but, we could just make it so much easier if we just make it go away.
Right. Making our problems just disappear.
Yep.
And from what Hatil says, this, even though it's wrapped in all this family togetherness rhetoric, you put the dots together. They had an intervention with this guy.
Right.
He's apparently got he limps. We know he needs a leg and back brace to get around. And they had a family meeting. They had an intervention to convince him to die.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, it sounded like they had a family meeting where everybody else decided he had to die.
Right.
They had a vote. So I don't think he even had that much of a choice.
I thought he was there, but maybe not. That would be even worse.
Well, he might have been there, but they still voted.
Yeah. I took it as he might have been there when it happened, but he had no voice in the matter. It was everybody else decided that he was going to be killed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm amazed at, and I really like this, one of the things I was reading in the background notes at Memory Alpha was that, like, Michael Piller wanted more conflict in this, and Brandon Braga wanted it to be more meditative, more intellectual. And I think Braga made the right choice, because Hatil is dealing with all of this remarkably well. I mean, he's dealing with the fact his family wants him dead, and he's guilty about the fact that he is a burden to them, and he's serene, but he's uncomfortable, and then he finds out about Harry Kim coming back from the afterlife, but it's not what's expected, and he does not panic. It's not like the woman who woke up. It's not like Patera who panicked.
Right.
Hatil is holding it together. And I'm really impressed by that. And I think that adds to the story, because if he too was just freaking out and hysterical, it would take the focus away from the intellectual issues and the ability to process them and say, what would it be like if I was in this situation?
Well, and it also makes the resolution of Harry's situation, frankly, so much smoother. But it really, I mean, I think it made it where there was an out for this guy. Because he was willing to think about it, he was, like I said, kind of meditate on it, reflect on it. Harry was able to help him come up with a solution that was mutually beneficial, even if it meant that Harry had to die.
Yeah.
Right.
So we got one body swap to get into the situation. Let's do another body swap to get out of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is what Michael Piller probably wanted was Harry having to fight his way to the cenotaph room and getting in there just in time and activating it just before the thanatologist and the others showed up to stop him, and that sort of high drama action sort of thing. But I just, like, you're right. I mean, we would have lost these really nice moments with Hatil, and Patera even gets her moments as well, and I think that would have been lost. I think this is Star Trek at its best, when it's not just all about action beats, but has times to think and to have intellectual discussion and philosophy and that sort of thing. And that's what we have here. So Janeway, another body shows up on the Voyager, and Janeway notes that when the bodies appear, they release neural energy that passes into the rings. Check that off and come back to that.
Yep.
Yes.
That's their real afterlife. That's our hopeful out for this episode.
Yes. So apparently Patera didn't do this when she appeared, but maybe because there was still neural activity in her brain, like she wasn't quite dead yet, I guess. So they have to move away from the planet. The Voyager has to move away from the planet because the destabilizing.
They should have done that a long time ago. I mean, as soon as subspace things are opening up in proximity to a warp core. Move the warp core now. Either that, or give me some line about how, don't worry, we can protect it and keep it from rupturing on us.
Well, Torres did kind of say she was trying to, but but she needs to come back. She's working on a better thing. But you're right.
I also like that her captain's orders are warp 7 now. They're in the middle of this ring where there's all kinds of subspace stuff. Let's activate this giant subspace engine right in the middle of it. No, go to thrusters till we get clear and then hit the warp drive.
Right. Well, let's trust in Paris as our helmsman that he's not that he'll interpret the captain's orders.
Yeah, that's what the deflectors are for.
Yes. So Patera goes for a walk with Cass, and she tells her that her people don't believe in spirit, that they're like you were saying, Jimmy, that they're materialists essentially. that they're reborn with a new body, which is the whole point of going through the spectral rupture. So they all come up with this plan to send Patera back through the vacuole with a subspace transponder to give to Harry so they can beam him back, which sounds like a good idea. But the plan goes awry. They take too long beaming her through. And by the way, notice who's at the controls of the transporter.
Seska. And this is the first episode she gets named.
Yes. And when you look at things in retrospect, you wonder about Seska's motives about things. But I mean, her motives are probably okay here, but it's interesting. But in any case, they take too long beaming her through. The vacuole collapses and Patera is killed. I have to say,
she instantly webs up.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She's like Spider-Man here. But I have to say, nobody seems all that upset about it. Like, oh, that's too bad. You know what I mean? This, I guess because she was already going to die, that maybe they didn't feel like it was a big deal.
But no one said, okay, so now what? How do we get Harry now?
There is that too. Yes. Anyway, I feel like on most TV shows, a death of people is not treated as like it would actually be treated, but that's a whole other.
I forget if there was a commercial break right after she died. If there was, we can assume they did some dealing emotionally during the commercial break.
Yes, yeah, let's assume that. So,
but
Naria, go ahead.
We also have an unknown length ticking clock now, because now they've established that they do have something to protect the warp drive, but they don't know how long it'll last. Right. So, and eventually I think they say like 2 hours, but so it's
whatever
okay. We have our artificial ticking clock now, just like we had our artificial Juice the drama moment where Patera dies.
Yes. Yeah. So Naria, the thanatologist, wants to take Harry off to Area 51 to be studied, but Harry wants to stay near the vacuole to figure out how to get back. And there's talk of there are riots. People are starting to become violent about they're afraid of him and what he represents, which is, again, very interesting. That seems very real, and that sort of reaction, some people would react that way.
Yeah, but this thing occurs every 6 hours, and so Harry should be like, 6 hours and I'm out of here, dude. Study me all you want until then.
Yeah,
but they must have they must just be a bunch of Twitter addicts on this planet if riots are starting this quickly.
Well, we don't know how.
I mean, these people need to learn not to believe everything you read on the internet.
But has it been just one cycle, or has it been like, because bodies have been showing up on Voyager?
But those are every 2 hours, even if it's just the same one. I think there are multiple vacuoles. They haven't done anything to establish that Harry's has been used. I mean, Hatil was going to be the next guy to go through it, and he's still there.
I guess. Yeah. I had a feeling that maybe a longer time had passed, but the TV time compression is probably at work here. So, Hatil, meanwhile, is now wrapping himself in his burial shroud, part of their ritual, which you have to do it yourself, I guess, in their religion. And
fine.
And they decide to switch places. With Hatil sneaking away, he's got friends in the country who will hide him. Apparently,
he's coming.
heretics.
He's coming to Montana. He can hide out in Montana.
Yeah, Vorni heretics in Montana are going to help him hide from his fate. And Harry is willing to get killed by the cenotaph on the chance the doctor can revive him. That is faith.
Mm-hmm.
So Harry gets in the. Now again, this is typical Star Trek, where we have to say the machine somehow works on human physiology close enough, to the Vorni physiology to kill him in such a way as to be revivable.
Yeah, that's not too implausible. I mean, from what we see, it's not like it decapitates him or something, although the doctor could fix even that.
Probably.
But Harry's wrapped up sitting in this cenotaph thing, which looks kind of like a clamshell.
Yeah.
And he's wrapped up like a mummy, and his wife's holding his hands, and everyone's gathered around him, and they're saying goodbye to him. And luckily he doesn't have to say anything back, because it wouldn't be Hatil's voice. And then he lies down, they close the clamshell, and his wife pushes the death button.
Yeah.
And then we see inside the shell, he rips off the face cloth so that we can see his facial expression.
Yes.
and he's clearly panicked, but these two red glowing rods come out and stick on the sides of his neck, and he dies.
Yes. I think it's kind of funny, the whole like, wow, Hatil, you seem a little bulkier and a little buffer than before. Maybe we don't need to send you through just yet. We're hanging around for a little while longer.
It's the wrappings. They add 10 pounds.
Yeah, that's what it is. So,
unfortunately, our ticking clock on the warp drive has just gone off, and so just to juice the drama, Janeway announces we got to leave now.
Well, not only that, we have a vacuole forming, though. Oh, but it's an alien female, so it's not Harry. So let's go. It's like, oh, but they've got it. Oh, they don't have him. But then Harry's body shows up, and the doctor revives him. And it's a very interesting moment where after the doctor gives him the hypo spray to wake him up.
Artificial revival drama, too. It's like, he gave him the shot, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work. And then Harry gasps and opens his eyes.
Yep. Apparently, the time interval between the hypo spray and the wake up was left by the director, left up to Garrett Wang, the actor. Like, you just do it when you feel it's right. And that's why it took so long. Like, he kind of just laid there for a bit and then just went when he felt like it was the time to wake up. So it's kind of interesting. I can imagine the other actors going, all right, Garrett, come on.
Really, dude? Yeah.
I was at a science fiction, this was back in like the 80s, at a science fiction convention in Oklahoma City called OakCon. And one of the guests was Forrest J. Ackerman, who is famous for having done Famous Monsters, among other things, Famous Monsters magazine. And so he's kind of a sci-fi horror famous publisher fan guy. He had one of the largest collections of fan memorabilia in science fiction and fantasy. Like, he had Bela Lugosi's Dracula cape and stuff at his house, which he called the Acker Mansion. And I was at this panel with Forrest J. Ackerman, and he was talking about once he had a bit part in a movie, in some, cheesy B movie, and he was supposed to die. His character was supposed to die. So he thought he'd do a really good performance. So he died, and he just laid there, and he didn't move, and he didn't breathe, and he just let it go. He was waiting for them to tell him to get up. And eventually they're moving on, they're doing stuff, and he hears his wife say, "I think something's wrong with my husband." So apparently Garrett Wang isn't the only one to have a really long death thing.
That's right. So Harry is revived, and we have the closing scene where Janeway goes to see Harry. Harry's sitting by himself down in the mess hall, and she wants to talk to him about his experience, life, death, life again. But they don't have a common frame of reference to go for. No, I'm just kidding. That's Star Trek.
Oh.
So, but Janeway encourages him to take time off, stop, reflect, absorb all the things that happened to you. Don't get jaded, which is what she wishes she had done when she was a young junior officer, seeing all the wonders of the universe.
And by encourages him to take time off, we mean orders him to take time off. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a nice moment, actually. I think it's a nice moment between Janeway and Kim. It's a little bit of the opportunity for Harry Kim to kind of move beyond the wide-eyed newbie out in the universe for the first time to kind of, he's had this moment, which is good, I think, in the development of the character. Harry, go ahead.
Well, I like what Janeway does in this scene. I don't like what Harry does in this scene, because previously Harry was pointing out to Hatil that, there are ways to harmonize your beliefs about the afterlife with what I've experienced. And Harry also was open to the idea of the afterlife. He did not seem like he knew for sure what happened to humans. I mean, he said he did not know for sure what happened to humans. And he also said he didn't know for sure what happened to our alien friends here. But then in this scene, because they need to reasons, I guess, he's suddenly become a skeptic, and it's like, all those people's beliefs about the afterlife were false. And Janeway's the one that's, oh, wait, neural energy, that's maybe their real afterlife. Right. They do maybe achieve higher consciousness in the rings of this planet. And it's just clumsy writing, because it's inconsistent with what Harry had seen before. Harry has not had anything that happened to him that would change his mind about any of that stuff. It's just to set up Janeway's hopeful ending with maybe they have their real afterlife as neural energy in the rings. And so Harry pivots from becoming open-minded to being closed-minded just to set up that line, and that's bad writing.
I wonder though if it's supposed to, and maybe it's clumsily, but if it's supposed to show that what Harry's reassurances to Hatil earlier were not, he didn't really believe it, that he was just trying to be nice.
Then he's a cynical, lying manipulator with other people's religious beliefs.
I suppose. I mean, that's possible. But in one sense, I want to ask is, does this constitute an afterlife? This, becoming neural energy in a D-class planet's asteroid ring? Is that an afterlife? Can we say that is, or is that just another stage in being before the final? From our point of view, from a Catholic point of view.
Well, so there are multiple ways of looking at this. These people are not humans, number one, and apparently they're not even from our dimension. So God can give them whatever kind of afterlife he wants. Okay. Now, this might be, if I were to analyze this with my St. Thomas Aquinas hat on, I would say, well, these people have to have a soul that animates their bodies, and it's clearly a rational soul because they're rational beings, so they're going to have an afterlife. But I would be inclined, as Thomas Aquinas, to say it's not neural energy. And so what I would, but if I have evidence that they have this neural energy that continues to survive, I would say that's a part of them, and maybe they work different as a species than we do. So, like, for example, the Egyptians believed that humans aren't just a composite of body and soul. The Egyptians believed that in addition to your body, you had your shadow, your double, your Ka, and your Ba. And those could have different fates in the afterlife. Obviously, they wrap if you're rich, they mummify you for your body. But then other things happen with the other parts of you. So maybe the aliens have a physical body, a rational soul, and a packet of neural energy. And the neural energy has one destiny, but the soul's going to go off and do something else. That's how I would look at it if I was analyzing this from a Thomas Aquinas point of view. Another option would be maybe they are a multi-stage life form, like frogs and tadpoles, or caterpillars and butterflies. And their initial physical stage, they have this body, just like a tadpole has a tail, and then tadpoles lose their tails when they become frogs, so maybe they lose their physical body and become a neural energy creature for a while, and then eventually when the neural energy creature dies, that's when they have their real afterlife.
Right. I suppose that's suggested from the cocooning that the body goes through in one sense.
Sure, yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know that the writers intended that, but sure, okay, we've got the initial caterpillar phase, they become a neural energy butterfly, and then the butterfly soul goes to heaven.
Yeah, I could see that. They didn't say, it's not the butterfly episode, it's Emanations, so, but I like that idea.
Yeah, of course they didn't connect it to the really creepy emanation, the spider webs.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I think that's about wraps up the episode. That's where it ends here. And so any last thoughts, Father Cory?
Nothing here.
Jimmy?
Not me.
All right. So then let's wrap things up by doing the very important thing that we always do, which is to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Tom L., Thomas S., Daniel D., Kelly B., and Max S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week and makes me sound good. That's it from us. What did you think of this Voyager episode, Emanations, and what it has to say about the afterlife and euthanasia and death and all of that? Let us know by commenting at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Enterprise episode, Civilization. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me in sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, what we don't know about death is far, far greater than what we do know.